I had been out that night with a buddy of mine. A couple of guys came up and got me from behind.
The air inside that Texas courtroom was heavy, the kind of silence that comes right before history changes. All eyes were on Richard Rawlings, the face millions had cheered for on Fast and Loud, the man who seemed untouchable, unstoppable, and always one step ahead. But in that moment, the confidence was gone. His hands trembled, his eyes stayed locked on the floor, and as the gavel came down, the reality was undeniable. The empire he built was crumbling in front of everyone. This wasn't just another scandal. It wasn't just another celebrity downfall. It was the unmasking of a man who sold America a dream of fast cars, big money, and bigger personalities, only to have it all come apart under the harshest spotlight of all, the law. The same cameras that once captured him sealing million-dollar deals now clicked as officers closed in. The fall was public, brutal, and absolute. To understand how a man at the peak of fame could unravel so completely, you have to rewind the story, not to the courtroom, but to the very first spark. Long before TV lights ever followed him, Rawlings stood in the middle of a forgotten Dallas garage, staring at broken-down car frames like they were buried treasure. What others saw as junk, he saw as fortune. That vision, that hunger, became the fuel behind Gas Monkey Garage. On screen, it looked like lightning in a bottle. Cars reborn, deadlines pushed to the edge, and deals struck with fearless charm. Viewers weren't just watching builds, they were watching the rise of a man who convinced the world he could turn rust into riches. It was bold. It was thrilling. It was the American dream strapped to an engine roaring at full speed. But here's the catch. Dreams built this fast rarely last forever. Richard Rawlings was born in 1969, and long before television cameras ever followed him around, he was already hustling, flipping cars by the thousands. That grind gave him enough fuel to open a bar, a restaurant, and even a live music venue, creating a little empire that smelled like gasoline and barbecue. Then came 2012. Fast and Loud roared onto the Discovery Channel, and suddenly viewers were hooked. For 8 straight years, audiences tuned in to watch rusted junkers transformed into auction gold, with Richard sealing deals, lighting cigars, and tearing off in machines loud enough to rattle windows. At its height, the show wasn't just popular, it was one of Discovery's biggest hits, pulling millions of viewers who didn't even care about cars, but loved watching a comeback story unfold. Richard leaned into the role. Flashy shirts, vintage Mustangs, that cocky grin. He sold the image of the king of cars and made people believe it. And for a while, he really did live like one. Gas Monkey Garage exploded into a global brand. Fans packed car shows to cheer him on, his Instagram flexed private jets, and Gas Monkey merchandise flew off the shelves. He partnered with Dodge, showed up at SEMA, and turned himself into the face of American car flipping culture. But the lifestyle that looked effortless on TV came with a hidden cost. Behind the scenes, his crew raced brutal deadlines that cameras didn't always show, while Richard made flipping cars and drinking beer look like the ultimate dream. And then, in 2020, the ride hit a wall. Fast and Loud ended. The Gas Monkey Bar and Grill shut its doors. The once unstoppable brand began to lose momentum. Fans noticed Richard drifting into side projects, YouTube uploads, new ventures, smaller car builds that lacked the high-stakes magic that made him a household name. The King of Cars had built an empire, but the question lingered. Could he keep it alive without the show that made him untouchable? Richard was still out there hustling cars and talking big, but the roar of Fast and Loud had faded, and with it went the shield that once kept critics at bay. Suddenly, questions started swirling. How real were those lightning-fast deals on camera? Were those glossy builds actually road-tested, or just polished for the lights? Soon the whispers got louder. Forums lit up on talk of unpaid bills, sour deals, and business decisions that didn't match the TV swagger. The once untouchable King of Cars began to look vulnerable. Then came the wildfire rumor, shared in late-night TikToks and YouTube shorts, that Richard had been sentenced over a Mustang scandal. It wasn't true, but it spread fast because the line between his confident persona and the messy reality behind the brand had blurred. The truth is, Richard Rawlings sold a fantasy, the idea that anyone could turn rust into gold. But behind the cameras, the car business isn't a fairy tale. It's brutal math. Tax bills, legal filings, and contracts no one cheers for. And that's where the real story begins. How America's most celebrated car guy found himself painted as its most wanted.
It all started with a single folder. Spring of 2023. An IRS agent cracked open a file stamped with Richard Rawlings' name, expecting just another high-profile audit. What they uncovered, though, would rip apart the image of non-stop wins and million-dollar flips and expose cracks that no camera crew could ever edit away. The lifestyle looked flashy, but the books told another story. A restoration parts budget read too perfectly, almost sterile, and a Mustang sale had paperwork that carried a VIN just slightly off. At first glance, it seemed harmless, a small typo, maybe a digit flipped. But when federal databases were checked, the number didn't just fail, it came back flagged as belonging to a car that never officially existed. This wasn't paperwork sloppiness, this was a phantom VIN tied to a bright metallic blue Mustang that fans had seen in the spotlight. It had been paraded at shows, photographed with crowds, and blasted across social media as Richard's latest six-figure flip. He'd been filmed behind the wheel, grinning, revving, even boasting that it would smash records at auction. Behind a curtain, though, federal eyes were locking in. The IRS pulled the Department of Transportation and multiple state agencies into the mix, scanning through Richard's entire trail of sales and expenses. Gaps began to show. Cars that should have gone through emissions testing had no trace of records. Registration fees were missing. Restoration write-offs were filed, but receipts didn't match the projects his channels promoted. Then investigators stumbled on something Richard himself had uploaded, a casual shop tour on YouTube. In the background, that same metallic blue Mustang gleamed under the lights. His crew laughed, his voice hyped the next big project, and the camera panned past its VIN plate, a plate that didn't match anything in Texas filings. What came next peeled back the curtain even further. The Mustang appeared to be built from a salvaged shell, its paperwork refiled under a completely different title. The move cut out inspection fees, skipped oversight, and disguised what should have been a scrutinized high-dollar build. That single car, once a centerpiece of the empire, became the thread that pulled everything loose. The IRS quietly launched a federal probe targeting Gas Monkey Holdings itself, digging into deductions, merchandise income, and international deals that hinted at skipped tax reporting. What began with a single VIN mismatch now looked like the start of something much bigger. Money trails began to stretch across oceans. Auctions in Europe, collectors in Asia, yet something didn't line up. Customs forms were missing, export paperwork seemed incomplete, and the sheer volume of transactions Richard claimed never matched the official records. An audit cracked open those gaps, exposing sales that had no legal footprints at all. Behind the scenes, investigators built a wall of evidence. Every VIN, every license plate, every car shown under studio lights or Instagram filters was logged and cross-checked. They replayed Fast and Loud episodes frame by frame, pulling timestamps that matched invoices Rawlings had filed with the IRS. What started as a routine review of taxes quickly spiraled into something much darker. Federal agents fanned out across the country, sitting in auction houses, tracking down old buyers, combing through dusty records that Rawlings probably thought no one would ever bother to touch. For a man who branded himself as the king of cars, turning junkyard rust into million-dollar showpieces, the smallest missing receipt now carried the weight of a felony. Then came the discovery no fan expected. The Mustang with the altered VIN wasn't just a mistake. It was the keyhole into a secret empire. And the entrance to that empire? Hidden in plain sight. Gas Monkey staff had whispered about a storage area they called the cage. To outsiders, it looked harmless. Stacks of old body panels, greasy carburetors and wooden crates, shelves lined with dust. But when federal agents pushed deeper, past a false wall, they found something no one saw coming. On the other side stood a locked steel door. With a warrant in hand, agents forced their way inside and uncovered what they later described as a forgery shop built to industrial standards. High-powered laser etchers, blank VIN tags, and printers capable of producing flawless registration stickers filled the room. On a scarred workbench sat folders of VIN data taken from salvage yards, neatly cross-referenced in ledgers that showed which identities had been reassigned to which cars.
The investigation that began with one suspicious number had just uncovered a hidden machine, an entire underground operation running in the shadows of Richard Rawlings' empire. This wasn't restoration, it was reinvention by deception. Wrecked shells, stolen frames, and waterlogged husks rolled into the shadows of that cage and emerged with new identities, polished to look like rare treasures. Buyers thought they were snagging authentic classics, never realizing the numbers on the paperwork were as carefully staged as the shine on the chrome. Federal agents would later uncover a trail of VINs that bounced across multiple states, each stop scrubbing away a piece of the car's past until it resurfaced in Texas, branded with Gas Monkey credibility. The sleight of hand was so polished that even seasoned collectors never blinked. The silence broke only when insiders started talking. One technician admitted he was ordered to grind away history and bolt on fresh plates, told it was just shop business. Another recalled thick stacks of cash being handed over in after-hours pickups. No receipts, no trace. What nobody expected was that the evidence was hiding in plain sight. In one of Rawlings' own YouTube videos, he filmed a midnight walkthrough, joking about secret projects behind a locked door. Fans thought it was hype for a future build. Investigators saw something else. The heavy hinges, the keypad entry, details that matched whistleblower photos. This wasn't a side hustle. More than 50 cars passed through that system in under 2 years, generating millions. The bills showcased on TV had clean trails, but the real money came from projects hidden off camera, funneled through that locked room. The cage became the heartbeat of a machine designed to churn out untaxed profits and untouchable legends, a pipeline hidden under the Gas Monkey brand. And it was that very pipeline that drew federal prosecutors straight to Richard Rawlings' empire, shifting him from the man who sold dreams to the man under criminal investigation. The empire built on speed, swagger, and screen magic cracked open the day investigators pried into that hidden room. Gas Monkey's legend didn't just wobble, it collapsed, smashed beneath the weight of cold evidence. The final blow didn't come from an enemy, but from someone inside the garage walls. A betrayal so sharp, it handed prosecutors the very key they'd been waiting for. It began with a dream deal gone rotten. A European collector, obsessed with finding an authentic Shelby GT500, thought he'd struck gold at Gas Monkey Garage. Richard Rawlings himself walked him through the car, selling him a story as polished as the silver paint under the lights. Heritage, authenticity, American roads, every word a hook. The handshake sealed it. An Instagram post made it gospel. The collector wired $1.2 million, certain he owned a treasure. But what he received was nothing more than smoke and mirrors. The VIN was a fabrication, the papers were lies, the history was manufactured like a script. Customs spotted the truth the moment the card tried to cross borders, sparking a diplomatic call that turned an angry client into the ultimate whistleblower. Emails, receipts, voice notes, he brought it all. And with it, prosecutors didn't just have a trail, they had the map. Yet the biggest shield Rawlings had wasn't hidden. It was right there on television. Fast and Loud wasn't merely entertainment. It was camouflage. Millions tuned in, convinced they were watching rare cars reborn. Every stage deadline, every barn find, every revved-up reveal painted Rawlings as the patron saint of muscle cars. Fans believed, collectors bought in. But under the glare of studio lights, VIN numbers became fiction. Paperwork rewrote pasts, and what looked like a celebration of automotive heritage was in truth the slickest sales pitch ever broadcast. The show wasn't just a hit, it was the perfect con. Every episode wasn't just entertainment, it was a blueprint for deception. The show became Richard Rawlings' greatest disguise, a stage where confidence sold cars and trust was bought in bulk. As Fast and Loud's ratings soared, so did the demand for Gas Monkey machines. creating the perfect smokescreen for deals that would one day betray him.
The collapse didn't come gradually. It detonated. For more than a decade, Gas Monkey Garage was the beating heart of car culture. Loud engines, frantic builds, and deadlines that seemed impossible until the cameras cut. But in just 72 hours, the empire that took years to construct was stripped bare. It started small. A lone post on a classic car forum. One collector pointing out receipts that didn't add up on a Shelby GT500. A VIN out of sync, a timeline too neat, paperwork that didn't match what viewers remembered from the show. Within hours, enthusiasts across the internet turned episodes into evidence. Freeze framing, cross-checking chassis numbers, dragging old auction photos into the light. What had once been binge-worthy television turned into a crime scene. The fallout was immediate. Partners who once begged for collaborations backed away in silence. Auction houses raised flags on anything tied to Gas Monkey. Within a day, Discovery pulled promotional banners, distancing itself with a vague statement about content review. Sponsors erased their logos as if they had never been there. And in the classic car market, the panic spread like wildfire. Collectors who had paid fortunes for Gas Monkey cars started tearing into welds and peeling back paint. Some uncovered hidden numbers that betrayed the story. Others found liens on vehicles they thought were clean. What was once an empire of showmanship became a house of forged documents and broken promises, and the value of Gas Monkey provenance plunged overnight. In less than 3 days, the brand that once symbolized speed, swagger, and success had been reduced to paused video frames and forum threats. The real gut punch? Every glossy, fast and loud episode that built Richard Rawlings' legend was now the evidence dismantling it. When the dust cleared, this wasn't just one man's downfall. It was a warning shot to the entire industry. In a business obsessed with shine, it exposed just how fragile trust really is. Rawlings' legacy proved one thing. Once credibility cracks, no amount of horsepower can put it back together. And it left car fans everywhere with a chilling question. If gas monkeying wasn't what it seemed, who else on television is hiding behind the same smoke and mirrors?